Respect is often spoken of as something we seek from others. We look for it from colleagues, from friends, from family, and from society at large. But what we often forget is that respect doesn't originate out there. It starts right here with ourselves. If you do not carry respect for who you are, what you stand for, and how you choose to live, then every ounce of external validation will feel hollow. Respect is not first given, it is first cultivated within. Think about this. When you walk into a room, before you speak a word, people pick up on how you carry yourself. They notice your posture, your tone, your energy. If you don't believe you are worthy of respect, that doubt leaks out in subtle ways: hesitation in your voice, avoidance of eye contact, shrinking instead of standing tall. Others sense it, and they respond in kind. The way you see yourself silently instructs others on how to see you. Respecting yourself does not mean inflating your worth or pretending to be someone you're not. It means acknowledging your value without apology. It's saying to yourself, I matter enough to be heard, I matter enough to take up space, I matter enough to have boundaries. When you begin to truly believe this, the external respect you seek stops feeling like a demand and starts arriving naturally. Now, here's the challenge: many of us confuse self-respect with external achievements. We tie our worth to our job title, our bank account, our social following. But these are fragile foundations. Take them away and what remains? Real self-respect is not conditional. It isn't rented from achievements. It is owned from within. It's the quiet confidence that says, even if I lose everything tomorrow, I am still worthy. Self-respect also shows up in the decisions we make, the people we allow into our lives, the way we speak to ourselves, the standards we hold ourselves to. These are all reflections of how much or how little we respect who we are. When we say yes to things that undermine us, when we tolerate behavior that diminishes us, we are signaling to ourselves and to the world that our respect has limits. And here's the paradox: people often think respect comes by pleasing others, by saying yes, by bending to fit expectations. In reality, it's the opposite. When you stand firm in your principles, when you hold the line on your boundaries, when you choose integrity over convenience, that is when others begin to respect you most. Self-respect is contagious. It teaches others how to treat you without you ever needing to demand it. Every relationship you will ever have, whether professional or personal, is influenced by this inner foundation. If you respect yourself, you will not accept disrespect disguised as love. If you respect yourself, you will not allow your workplace to define your worth. If you respect yourself, you will find that the respect of others becomes a reflection of what you've already given yourself. The truth is simple: people don't respect you because you ask them to. They respect you because you've shown them what respect looks like. Starting with yourself, it is less about convincing others and more about convincing yourself that you are deserving of the same dignity, compassion, and honor you so easily extend to others. There is a fine line between self-worth and ego, and many people confuse the two. On the surface, they may look similar: confidence, certainty, and self-assurance. But if you pay close attention, you'll see that one is built on a foundation of inner strength, while the other is built on fear and insecurity. Self-worth is quiet, steady, and grounded. Ego, on the other hand, is loud, defensive, and fragile. Self-worth comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for without needing constant validation. It doesn't shout, "Look at me." It simply is. It allows you to walk into a room without needing to be the center of attention because you are already centered within yourself. Ego, however, craves recognition. It needs applause to feel alive. It demands respect rather than earning it, and when it doesn't get what it wants, it feels diminished. The difference becomes clear in how each responds to challenge. A person with self-worth can hear criticism without collapsing. They can listen, reflect, and even admit when they're wrong because their value is not threatened by imperfection. But a person driven by ego will fight, defend, and deflect at all costs. To them, being wrong feels like losing worth, so they armor themselves with arrogance. Self-worth is about acceptance. It acknowledges strengths and weaknesses alike and says, "I am still enough." Ego, in contrast, denies flaws, hides insecurities, and covers them with bravado. That's why arrogance often feels heavy and exhausting, while self-respect feels light and freeing. When you know your worth, you don't need to prove it. When you operate from ego, proving it becomes a constant battle. Consider how people treat others. Self-worth fosters respect for others because it is rooted in respect for oneself. It sees others as equals, not threats. Ego, however, thrives on comparison. It needs someone to be beneath it in order to feel tall. Where self-worth lifts people up, ego pushes people down. Where self-worth celebrates collaboration, ego seeks competition. Self-worth also creates resilience. When failures happen, self-worth says, "This does not define me." It uses setbacks as lessons rather than scars. Ego, however, cannot tolerate failure. It sees it as proof of inadequacy and therefore avoids risk, hides behind excuses, or blames others. The irony is that self-worth grows stronger through failure, while ego becomes weaker. One way to test the difference is to notice how you feel in silence. Can you be alone with yourself without the need for praise, likes, or approval? If the answer is yes, you're leaning into self-worth. If silence feels uncomfortable, if it feels like you cease to exist without external recognition, then ego may be in control. At its heart, self-worth is about authenticity. It's about being enough without performance, being valued without pretense, and being respected without demand. Ego masks insecurity, self-worth reveals truth. And the moment you begin to understand that difference, you'll realize that respect doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from living with dignity and self-respect. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls meant to keep people out, but in truth, they are bridges that define healthy connection. They are not about rejection, they are about clarity. Boundaries communicate what is acceptable and what is not, both to yourself and to others. Without them, relationships become unbalanced, respect erodes, and resentment quietly builds. The truth is, people don't treat you based on who they are alone, they treat you based on what you allow. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you teach others that your needs are secondary. Every time you remain silent in the face of disrespect, you teach others that their behavior is permissible. Boundaries are the language by which we instruct others on how to treat us. Setting boundaries does not make you unkind, it makes you honest. It says, I value myself enough to protect my energy, my time, and my dignity. When you say no to what drains you, you are really saying yes to what nourishes you. People may resist your boundaries at first, especially if they benefited from your lack of them. But over time, they will either adjust or move away. Either way, respect begins to form. Boundaries also serve as an act of self-respect. When you hold yourself to a standard, you are showing that your well-being matters. You are saying, I will not compromise my values for approval. I will not sacrifice my peace for convenience. I will not betray myself for acceptance. The more consistently you enforce these lines, the more you reinforce your own worth. Think about how boundaries affect trust. When people know where you stand, they learn to trust your word. They know you will not overcommit and then resent it later. They know you mean what you say and say what you mean. Boundaries create reliability, and reliability builds respect. Without them, relationships are clouded by confusion and unmet expectations. Many fear that setting boundaries will make them seem selfish. But in reality, the absence of boundaries often creates more harm. It leads to exhaustion, burnout, and quiet bitterness. Healthy boundaries are not selfish, they are self-preserving. They allow you to give from a place of strength rather than depletion, which makes your contribution to others more meaningful. Boundaries are not just about saying no, they are also about defining your yes. They allow you to prioritize what truly matters, to focus on the relationships and commitments that align with your values. In doing so, you teach others that your time and attention have weight. What you prioritize tells the world what you respect, and what you respect is what others will learn to respect too. At the core, boundaries are about alignment. They align your actions with your values, your words with your beliefs, and your relationships with your worth. They are not barriers to connection, but foundations of mutual respect. When you draw them clearly and honor them consistently, you create an environment where respect is not demanded, it is naturally given. Consistency is the silent force that builds credibility. It is not about grand gestures or occasional brilliance, it is about showing up the same way again and again. When your words align with your actions, people learn to trust you. When your promises are kept, people learn to respect you. Consistency may not be glamorous, but it is powerful because it turns respect from something fleeting into something lasting. Think about someone you deeply admire. Chances are it's not because they dazzled you once, but because they repeatedly demonstrated reliability over time. Whether it's keeping their word, honoring their commitments, or showing up in moments that matter, their steadiness created trust. That is the essence of credibility. It is earned through repetition, not proclamation. Self-respect plays a central role here. When you respect yourself, you take your word seriously. You don't make promises lightly, and you don't compromise your values for convenience. You recognize that your actions reflect who you are, and so you strive to make sure they align with what you say. Inconsistency erodes trust, both with others and within yourself. When you fail to be consistent, the cost is not just external, it is internal. Each time you break your own promises, you chip away at your self-trust. You begin to doubt yourself, and that doubt leaks into how you carry yourself. Over time, others notice. They stop relying on you, not because they dislike you, but because they cannot depend on you. Respect falters where inconsistency grows. Consistency does not mean perfection. It does not mean you never stumble. What it means is that when you fall short, you own it, you correct it, and you recommit. People respect honesty far more than excuses. Admitting a mistake and then following through with changed behavior is itself a powerful form of consistency. It shows integrity, and integrity strengthens respect. There is also a compounding effect to consistency. Each small action done reliably builds momentum. A single broken promise may seem insignificant, but repeated over time, it undermines everything. Likewise, a single kept promise may not feel remarkable, but repeated consistently, it builds a reputation that others cannot ignore. Respect grows with every fulfilled commitment. Consistency is also a discipline of self-control. It requires saying no to distractions that pull you off course. It demands alignment between your short-term actions and your long-term values. It means choosing to be dependable even when it is inconvenient, because you know credibility is not built in moments of ease, but in moments of challenge. Ultimately, consistency is a mirror of your character. When you are consistent, You communicate to the world, you can trust me because I trust myself. When you respect your own word enough to keep it, others begin to respect it too. Credibility is not claimed. It is demonstrated one consistent action at a time. Every morning, there's a quiet test waiting for you. The mirror, it doesn't ask questions out loud, but it reflects the answers back to you in the way you carry yourself. The mirror test is simple. How you treat yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you value yourself determines the standard you set for the world. If you cannot look at your own reflection with respect, how can you expect others to offer it to you? The words you use with yourself matter. When your inner dialogue is harsh, critical, or dismissive, it seeps into your actions. You may downplay your achievements, apologize unnecessarily, or shrink in moments where you should stand tall. People pick up on that energy. If you consistently show the world that you see yourself as less, the world often believes you. Self-treatment is not just about thoughts, it is about behaviors. Do you honor your health, your time, your boundaries? Do you show up for yourself in the same way you show up for others? When you neglect yourself, you broadcast a message that you are undeserving of care. When you respect yourself, you broadcast the opposite, that you're well, being matters, and therefore deserves to be honored. The mirror test also reveals whether you practice alignment. If you claim to value honesty but betray yourself with self-deception, if you claim to value growth but deny yourself effort, the reflection you see becomes fractured. Others sense this disconnect too. People respect congruence. When your treatment of yourself aligns with your stated values, without it, respect becomes difficult to sustain. Think about the leaders, mentors, or friends you admire most. Often their influence comes not just from how they treat others, but from how they treat themselves. They set standards through self-discipline, through the way they protect their time, through the pride they carry without arrogance. Their reflection is consistent, and in turn, others rise to meet that standard. There's also a subtle permission that comes from the way you treat yourself. When you carry yourself with dignity, others feel compelled to honor that dignity. When you show self-compassion, others learn that compassion is the proper way to interact with you. But when you consistently allow yourself to be diminished, others rarely feel motivated to treat you differently. You teach people how to see you by how you see yourself. The mirror test is not about perfection, it is about honesty. Looking in the mirror and saying, I am not where I want to be, but I am worthy of the journey, sets a powerful tone. Respect is not earned by flawless achievement, but by consistent acknowledgement of your own value. The standard you set does not have to be unattainable. It simply has to be authentic. Ultimately, the mirror reflects more than your image, it reflects your self-respect. Every look is a reminder that the way you treat yourself establishes the baseline for how others will treat you. If you raise that baseline through care, compassion, and integrity, the world often rises with it. Approval is a tempting drug. It gives an instant rush when someone validates you, praises you, or accepts you. But like any drug, the effect fades quickly, and you're left craving more. When you live for approval, you surrender your power to the opinions of others. Your worth becomes fragile because it depends on something outside your control. Authenticity, on the other hand, is steady. It is the choice to live in alignment with who you really are, regardless of who applauds or criticizes. It does not bend every time someone disagrees. It does not dilute itself to fit into expectations. Authenticity may not please everyone, but it earns something greater than approval. It earns respect. The danger of chasing approval is that it creates a false self. You begin to act, speak, and even think in ways designed to keep others happy. But beneath the surface, you know it's not truly you. That disconnect eventually drains you. You may be liked by many, but you feel hollow inside because the version of you receiving the praise is not real. Living authentically requires courage. It means saying what you believe even when it's unpopular. It means pursuing paths that make sense to you even if they confuse others. It means standing firm in your values, not because they guarantee approval, but because they reflect your truth. Respect often flows to those who are unapologetically themselves, because people admire consistency between belief and behavior. When you seek approval, your self-worth fluctuates with every comment, every look, every opinion. When you live authentically, your self-worth stabilizes because it comes from within. You no longer need constant reassurance to feel valid. You no longer need everyone to agree. You recognize that respect does not come from being universally liked. It comes from being real. Think about the people you admire most. Rarely are they the ones who sought to please everyone. More often, they are the ones who stood for something, who dared to live in alignment with their truth. Their authenticity may have attracted critics, but it also attracted deep respect. Approval fades, authenticity endures. There is also freedom in authenticity. When you stop chasing approval, you reclaim your energy, you stop performing and start living. You no longer waste time managing other people's perceptions because you trust that those who truly matter will respect you for who you are. That freedom allows you to focus on what is meaningful, not on what is pleasing. Approval makes you dependent, authenticity makes you strong. Approval asks you to fit in, authenticity asks you to stand out. Approval gives you momentary comfort, authenticity gives you lasting respect. And in the end, respect born of authenticity carries more weight than the fleeting applause of approval ever could. Respect is not only something you give or receive, it is something you project. It shows up in the energy you carry into every interaction. When you move through life with self-respect, people sense it even before you speak. It is in your posture, in your tone, in the calm certainty of your presence. Respect is contagious because energy is contagious. When you respect yourself, you send a silent message, I know my value. Others pick up on that signal and respond to it. They are less likely to test your boundaries, less likely to dismiss your contributions, and more likely to treat you with seriousness. The respect you carry within creates a field around you, and people mirror it back. This is why two people can enter the same room and receive completely different treatment. One person radiates self-doubt, and the room reflects hesitation. Another person radiates self-assurance, and the room reflects confidence. The difference is not in how the world works, it is in the energy each person brings. Respect begins as an inner state long before it becomes an outer reality. Carrying self, respect does not mean being intimidating or domineering. It is not about overpowering others, it is about grounding yourself. True self-respect is steady, not forceful. It doesn't demand attention, it attracts it naturally. People feel safe around it because it communicates balance rather than insecurity. Think about times when you met someone who walked with quiet confidence. They didn't need to boast, and yet you found yourself respecting them almost instinctively. That is the power of self-respect as energy. It bypasses performance and connects directly to presence. You don't have to convince people to respect you, you simply embody it and they reflect it back. This energy also determines the kinds of relationships you form. When you carry respect for yourself, you draw people who resonate with that energy. You attract those who value dignity, who honor boundaries, who treat others with care. Conversely, when self-respect is absent, it becomes easier to attract relationships built on imbalance or exploitation. Energy shapes connection. Self-respect as energy also builds resilience. Even when others fail to treat you with dignity, your own energy acts as a shield. You may feel disappointment, but you do not collapse. You remain rooted in the respect you give yourself, and that strength gradually shifts how others interact with you. Over time, consistency in your energy teaches people how to meet you. At its core, respect is less about demand and more about vibration. You cannot force people to value you, but you can embody value so clearly that it becomes difficult to ignore. When you walk through life with the energy of self-respect, you create an atmosphere where others instinctively rise to match it. Respect is not contained within a single person, it moves outward like ripples in water. When you choose to respect yourself, that choice does not stay with you alone. It influences how you show up in relationships, how you lead, how you parent, how you work. And in each of those spaces, your self-respect becomes a signal that gives others permission to treat themselves with the same dignity. People learn more from what you model than from what you say. When you consistently demonstrate self-respect, by honoring your boundaries, speaking with integrity, and valuing your time, others begin to notice. They see that it's possible to live without apology, without constant self-sacrifice, without compromising your worth. In that awareness, they feel encouraged to mirror the same behavior in their own lives. This ripple effect is especially powerful in leadership. A leader who respects themselves sets a tone for the entire team. They are less likely to burn out, less likely to demand unhealthy sacrifices, and more likely to cultivate an environment where people feel safe to respect themselves too. In contrast, a leader who disrespects their own limits often creates a culture where exhaustion and resentment spread just as quickly. The same is true in families. When children see a parent practicing self-respect, speaking kindly to themselves, enforcing healthy boundaries, prioritizing their well-being, they internalize those lessons. They learn that respect is not just something you give others, but something you must first give yourself. Those lessons ripple outward into how they approach friendship, school, and eventually adulthood. Even in small, everyday interactions, the ripple effect is at work. When you carry yourself with self-respect at work, colleagues notice. When you refuse to participate in gossip or tolerate disrespect, it sets a silent standard. It communicates that respect is not negotiable, and over time, it changes the way people interact in that environment. The beauty of this ripple effect is that it multiplies. One act of self-respect inspires another, and soon the culture around you begins to shift. Conversations become more thoughtful, boundaries more respected, interactions more genuine. Mutual respect starts to grow not because anyone demanded it, but because someone modeled it first. Of course, the ripple effect works both ways. A lack of self-respect can also spread, normalizing patterns of disrespect, compromise, and self-neglect. This is why choosing to respect yourself is not selfish. It is an act of contribution. It sets into motion a wave that impacts not only your own life, but the lives of those around you. At its essence, respect is not just personal, it is cultural. The way you treat yourself gives others permission to treat themselves with the same care. And when enough individuals model self-respect, the ripple becomes a tide, shaping communities, organizations, and families into places where mutual respect thrives.